helicopter can be defined as a precisely and perfectly controlled spin. For a proper helicopter, the wing must be fully open and rotate smoothly on the axis. In fact, the helicopter rotates on the same axis as the spin, but you can easily see the difference. During spin, the wing rotates mainly on the yaw axis, but also slightly on the roll axis due to oscillation. This is not the case for helicopter. During helicopter, the wing rotates on the yaw axis perfectly stable. This is the difference between these two tricks. During the helicopter, one side of the wing flies backwards, while the other side flies forward. This means that one side of the wing is put into a stall and loses its ability to fly forward. In this way, the wing rotates on the yaw axis, and with the correct brake inputs, the wing can rotate stably in the axis without oscillating. Although this trick seems easy from the outside, it is one of the most difficult tricks in acro paragliding. It is indeed the most difficult trick to master. I think the reason helicopter is one of the most difficult tricks is because this trick is all about feelings. We often need to apply precise brake inputs to perform this trick nicely. Reacting correctly to the behavior of the wing during the helicopter is an important skill, and this skill is about developing a feeling that requires a lot of time and training. Helicopter is not a stable trick. Since half of the wing is stalled and the other half is flying forward, the wing either wants to exit the trick or return to the stall. Keeping the wing at this point without letting it fly or stalling it back is not super easy. But despite all its difficulties, if you are a pilot who wants to progress in acro, you need to learn this trick very well.
Now shall we dance?
Why is this trick so important? There can be many different answers to this question, but there are two big reasons that seem very important to me. First reason, helico is the trick that improves the pilot's skills and the wing control the most among all acro tricks. Second reason, helicopter is the only trick that connects to almost all other acro tricks. In other words, when you reach a certain level in acro and train the connected tricks, you will see the great advantage of spending a lot of time on helicopter. Since almost all the tricks can be connected to helicopter, being good at this trick will allow you to learn the spin-related tricks much faster. Mastering this trick is probably the most beneficial thing you can do for your progression. I believe these are the two biggest reasons why helicopter is the most important trick. Skill requirement. The most common answer to this question is that you must have very good stalling skills. This is an undeniably correct answer, but I think we should explain it in more detail. Since there are different types of stalls, we have to explain exactly which stall form is more important for us. When we say good stall skills, we clearly talk about backfly, also called tail slide. Although its importance and value have been underestimated since the beginning of the sport, backfly is one of the most critical skills that every pilot must practice frequently and master after reaching basic proficiency. But especially for those who want to start to acro trainings, being good at backfly is very critical for safety. So let's talk about the different forms of stall. Although all stall forms are similar to each other, it would be more accurate to consider all these forms separately. Since how open the wings span at the moment of stall changes the wing's behavior and entry and exit techniques. In this video, I will only talk about two types of stalls that interest us the most: deep stall, backfly, and different forms of backfly. Generally, when people talk about good stalling skills, they usually mean this type of backfly, where the wing just stays in sweet spot without oscillating, without moving around. However, I think it would be very beneficial for your progression to go a little further and train more technical forms of backfly. The form of backfly that I recommend to practice is to open the span of the wing as much as possible by releasing the brakes gently during a normal backfly. To do this, you need to actively and precisely play with the brakes. Since releasing the brakes, even just a little, will cause the wing to move forward and fly, you should pull the brakes back immediately after releasing. There is no way to keep the wing in stall only by releasing the brakes and not pulling them back to the point where they were. Of course, you need to release the brakes a bit to open more span, but you should do this progressively. In stall, as you higher your hands, more technical it gets. At the point of a normal backfly, the wing has not so much desire to fly. But as you open more span and let the wing want to fly, it behaves much more actively. This exercise will teach you how to keep the glider in stall when it behaves more wild. There is more than one important reason why I recommend practicing this stall form. Firstly, this is important for your stall and wing control skills in general. In a normal backfly, keeping the wing in stall is relatively easy after some trainings. But for someone who wants to become more proficient at stall, this is a very good level. The importance of this training for helicopter is this. First, as you open the span of the wing during backfly, the wing gets closer to the dip stall point. Control becomes more difficult and technical, but this gives you the feeling of dip stall. If you can successfully hold the wing at that point, your job will be easier when learning the dip stall. Besides all this, I think the most important benefit of training this stall form is it is generally recommended to be good at normal backfly as a skill requirement for helicopter. But everything that happens during the helicopter takes place at a point where the wing behaves more actively and aggressively compared to the backfly point. During normal backfly, which we call the sweet spot, the wing doesn't behave aggressively or wildly in any way. No matter how much the pilot improves himself at this stable point, when he starts to practice helicopter, he will have to experience a situation where the wing behaves much more wild and sensitive. And I think normal backfly is not enough to prepare a pilot very well for this point. During the helicopter, the wing is in a half stall, half flying position, but behaves more actively as it normal flight. Practicing this type of stall gives the pilot a more realistic experience of what will happen when learning the helicopter. Glider requirement.
Now shall we dance?
When starting to learn a new trick in Acro, we must consider the safest conditions. Choosing the right gear is the most important of these conditions as it is directly related to safety. The matter of choosing the right gear when starting Acro is an issue that the entire Acro community has been focusing on lately. And the idea that almost everyone agrees on is that the pilot, regardless of the level, better start with certified wings with a high safety margin when learning helico and similar tricks. There are many advantages to starting Acro with EMB certified wings. First of all, it is important that EMB wings are generally slower than Acro wings, because high-speed Acro wings require quick reactions and it is not so easy to apply quick and correct brake inputs while learning such a complex trick. This is a skill that develops over time. Therefore, we have more time to react correctly on EMB wings and it does not react too aggressively to wrong brake inputs. Although Acro wings are designed to perform these tricks better and smoother, it is critical for safety to choose a relatively slower and safer wing at the beginning. Acro wings can only be the right choice after you gain some experience in basic Acro and discover some mistakes that everyone makes at the beginning. Otherwise, discovering these mistakes with an Acro wing may cause some serious consequences. The wing I used in this video is a Shaman 2 from Maya Gliders. It's an EMB wing and does a great job for basic Acro tricks. It is also possible to fly basic Acro with almost any EMB wings out there. It is important to use a regular harness when learning acro. Ideally the ones with 2 reserves, or you can use a front container to have a second reserve parachute just in case. Even if you are used to fly with cocoon harness, you should not use it in acro. Using a cocoon harness while learning the tricks makes everything unnecessarily difficult and it does not make sense. There are 2 important things about harness settings to reduce the possibility of twist. First one, open your chest straps as much as possible and widen the distance between the 2 risers as much as possible. Second one, you should position your harness in a more upright position using the side adjustments and place your feet under the harness and keep them there while performing a trick. These tips will help your body to follow the movement of the wing better. Entry techniques. There are basically 3 different entry techniques. So let's start with deep stall. The most used and popular method is deep stall, also called parachutal stall. This is the most generally accepted way to enter the trick since a very long time. Deep stall is the most difficult and precise form of stall. To do this, you have to be very active and sensitive on the brakes. The deep stall range is so tight, so you must apply precise brake inputs without overpiloting. As I mentioned earlier, to keep the wing above your head at deep stall position, you have to understand where your wing's deep stall point is. To get better at this stall point, you can try to master your backfly skill as I explained in the skill requirement chapter. How to do it? It's pretty much like the entry of backfly. You start pulling the brakes till you feel the stall point. At this point, the wing begins to slide backwards. Then as soon as you feel it, you release the brakes around 50%, then pull them back to the deep stall point and try to keep the wing at this point by playing with the brakes actively. If you can maintain at this point for 3-4 seconds and keep the wing in deep stall, it's already a very big step. To be able to find the deep stall point easily, you have to master your stalls and develop your feelings by practicing this trick frequently. As soon as you manage to stay in deep stall for some time, you're ready to start practicing the helicopter. For the entry, after you enter the stall, you have to keep it in deep stall for a short moment to make sure that the wing is right above your head. Then you release the brake of one side and keep the other side more or less at the same level for a sufficient amount of time. After releasing one side completely, it's better to touch the brake just to feel the tension. Advantages. Even though I don't recommend to use this technique for the first trials, somehow it's still very important to master. After gaining some experience in this trick, this technique is the most useful way to enter.
Now shall we dance?
It's just not the best idea to try your first helis with deep stall due to its technical difficulties. After some training, you will feel the deep stall point better and be able to keep your wing in deep stall longer time easily, so this will help you to learn the connected tricks faster in the future. Disadvantages. As I explained earlier, deep stall has a very short range on the brakes. This makes everything much harder. In order to perform nice deep stalls for helicopter, you really have to master this trick and it takes a very long time to succeed. In my opinion, deep stall is not the best way to enter the trick at the very beginning of your progression. Before I tell you my own opinion, let's talk about some mistakes you will possibly do when training helicopter with the deep stall entry. Entry when the wing is in front. If you try to start the helicopter with the wing in front of you, you will feel much more pressure as the wing will want to fly further. If you force the wing to turn at this point, the wing will most likely start to turn asymmetrically and the outside of the wing will make a strong forward shoot. When you first try the helicopter, it is important that the wing is placed perfectly above your head. If you cannot manage this in a deep stall, and the wing is always in front or behind, this is definitely a difficult stage to start with. Entry when the wing is at the back. Everything I just mentioned above applies to this situation as well. Trying to enter the helico with the wing behind us can also lead to similar situations. Actually, there are some more mistakes we could talk about here, but in general, they all depend on these two situations above, so I don't think it is necessary to separate them one by one. Since these mistakes are generally related to the position of the wing, it will be enough to mention these two for now. Backfly. I recommend everyone to try their first helis from Backfly entry. In my opinion, entering the helicopter from Backfly is the easiest and safest method. In order to perform helicopter from Backfly, you need to open the wingspan a little more at a normal Backfly point and make it ready for the turn. Although this method is not very popular, I think it has some great advantages compared to deep stall. If you try to enter the trick with the tips too much collapsed, the wing will not have enough energy to rotate properly and you might get a little cravat. Since you will already have good backfly skills, it will be quite easy to keep the wing in the proper position. Since the wing will be in backfly, the response of the wing will be relatively soft when starting to turn. How to do it? The position you need for a helicopter is pretty much like normal backfly, but instead of finding your sweet spot and staying there, you should try to open the wingspan just a bit more by releasing the brakes progressively and get the best shape for the turn. While opening more span on the wing, make sure you are not exiting the sweet spot completely. You don't want your wing to fly too much forward. So when you get to this point, check the tips of the wing if they are both parallel to each other and pointing forward. After finding the perfect position, take action at this point without waiting too long, otherwise the wing will want to move forward and backward, then it gets more difficult to stay in the perfect position. So here is an example. This is the proper position to start. Release the outside brake all the way up while keeping inside brake at the same point for some time. You might even have to pull inside just a bit more. After you started the rotation, slowly release inside brake just a bit to prevent the tip collapse. At this point, it's important to feel the tension on the outside brake, even though you might not need to use it at all. It's always good to feel the tension on the brakes, since it's one of the most important feedback sources. Another important point is weight shifting. It is generally very important for all the tricks in Acro. After you enter the helicopter, it's better to move your weight to the flying side to faster the rotation and stabilize it. You should be able to transfer your weight during the trick to slow down or speed up the rotation. The reason of this basically, if the rotation is unstable, you should slow the rotation by shifting your weight inside to stabilize or stop the rotation. If the rotation is stable, better to speed up by shifting your weight to outside. Advantages. Compared to other methods, backfly has many advantages. One of the biggest advantages is that, during backfly, we can keep the wing overhead in the perfect position to enter the helicopter. This is one of the biggest disadvantages of the deep stall method. By keeping the wing in the perfect position, we can prevent many mistakes that can be made at the entry. Another advantage is that, since the wing will be in backfly during entry, You will not get a dynamic response in the first stage. Although this method has advantages in terms of convenience and risk over other methods, it is not a piece of cake. It requires active piloting and precise inputs. No method is much easier or harder than the others. Since they all have different advantages and disadvantages, they can be preferred at different points of the learning process. In my opinion, the Backfly entry method should be preferred during the first attempts, as it reduces the margin of possible mistakes and doesn't require complex brake inputs as much as other methods need. Warnings: don't enter the helicopter if the wing is already in front of you. Don't enter the helicopter if the wing is too much in the back. Don't forget to check the tips and avoid cravat. Spin entry. Although it seems easy and effortless, spin entry is not the easiest method when starting to learn a helicopter. In my opinion, spin requires more precise brake inputs than the Backfly method. I'd like to clarify something at this point. All these three methods are important methods that definitely need to be learned. The reason why I categorize them according to their advantages and disadvantages is that one method is easier and safer than the other methods when trying the trick for the first time. But after you gain some experience with the trick, another method may become easier and more practical. In my opinion, Backfly entry is the safest and easiest in the first attempts, but after gaining some experience, spin and dipstall entries can be easier and more practical. Trying dipstall and spin entries in the first attempts is a little more difficult and requires sensitive brake inputs than the Backfly method. So I recommend using the Backfly method to start with and spin and dipstall methods in the later stages. How to do it? I'm not really sure if there is a generally accepted method to enter the helicopter from spin, but I have tried many methods myself and I will recommend the one that I think is the best. Someone who starts learning helicopter is expected to be able to do basic tricks such as stalls and spins very well. The method I find best is to spin with a rapid brake from level flight, and after wing rotates approximately 180 degrees, release the inside brake 50% and hold it at that point. As you complete the 360 turn, pull a bit more brake to stabilize the turn. You generally don't need to use outside brake at all in this way, but at this point it's still better to touch the outside brake just to feel the tension even if you don't pull. It is important to be ready to use it when needed. Don't touch the outside brake while spinning and during the rotation if the outside is not shooting wildly. So here is one proper entry. I spin the wing with a rapid brake input and release at least 50% and let the wing turn. Then I pull back a bit more brake as the wing shoots forward and stabilize it by braking actively. As you see, the wing shoots forward a bit too straight after the spin, so it's important to pull more brakes as the wing shoots forward after completing the 360 turn. I didn't need to touch the outside brake at all. Obviously, the dream exit is just to slow down the rotation by pulling a bit of outside brake and let the wing fly straight away. But for safety reasons, it's recommended to stop the rotation by putting the wing in backfly and exit after stabilizing it. Since the turns may not be very stable in the first helical attempts, it would be dangerous to let the wing exit the trick directly. In general, after gaining a little more experience in this trick and managing more stable helical turns, it will be safer to exit the trick by just slowing down the rotation but without putting the wing into stall. Now let's first follow the backfly exit technique And then we're gonna talk about the dynamic exit. During helicopter, the wing is not far from the stall point, so we don't need a lot of brakes to slow down the turn and put it into stall. After deciding to exit, start pulling outside brake progressively and shift your weight to the middle. While pulling the outside brake, slightly release the inside brake to slow down the speed of the rotation. After slowing down enough to stop the rotation, stabilize the backfly by equalizing the brakes, find the sweet spot, then follow the normal exit. Once you have some experience exiting the trick with backfly, you can try re-entering from there instead of exiting the trick. This is a very effective way to master techniques for entering and exiting the trick. This way, you can make several attempts in a row instead of entering and exiting the trick from the beginning each time. After stopping the rotation of the wing, stabilize the backfly and bring the wing back to the position we mentioned in the backfly entry technique, and use the same entry method again. Dynamic exit. We also need to use the outside brake for dynamic exit, but instead of putting the wing into stall, we pull the outside brake, slow down the speed of the rotation, and then release the brakes completely. Allow the wing to dive forward, then catch the chute. While pulling the outside brake, you can release the inside brake just a bit to slow down the rotation. As you slow down the speed, it's important to shift your weight to the middle for the exit. I hope this video helps you to progress better. I wish everyone happy flights and safe progress.